with our exciting evening, looking at our plans for Rugby Grounds Connected into 2022 and beyond. And as that mystery voice you just heard said, we will be recording the webinar and it will be available on demand. So if you do have continued connectivity problems or anything like that, if you do need to step away, we're recording and it will be available on demand. So really excited to be here talking to you again. Brief introductions. My name is Ted Mitchell, and I am the RFU National Facility Development Manager, and I guess will be hosting the webinar this evening. And as I say, I'm absolutely delighted that we're back online and talking to so many of you this evening. Very much the star of the show is our RFU Twickenham head groundsperson, Jim Buttar, and we'll be very much hearing from Jim, and we've got some great questions that have come in. We're taking live questions as well. So Jim will be familiar to many of you, and no doubt we'll have some great info to share with us. We'll also be hearing from my colleague Kieran, and Kieran will be looking at our new revamped web page. Going to be showing you very clearly how you can get involved in some of the things we talk about this evening. So we look forward to hearing from Kieran. And as usual, our webinar guru, Alex Thompson, is producing tonight's webinar. And you'll be hearing from Alex when we do our interactive polls. As always, as I always stress, the chat functions are a really big part of the evening. So use the chat function, say hello, let us know who you are, what club you're from, what your role is. And we've got a massive team out in the chat function from our side this evening. As always, we have our volunteer pitch advisors. We have Colin Worcester, Martin Matum, Andy Spetch, and Lawrence Gale, who I think are all there, and they're online to be able to pick up any questions and help you out. Really exciting, little bit of a tease here, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but our new regional pitch advisors are also in the chat. So they'll be there again, very keen to get involved and help you with any questions online. We have members of our RFU facility development team, and they again will be there to help with any technical issues and to give you a nudge with any of the questions we chuck in there, and will add value. And also, again, another bit of a tease here, but we have our friends from Honda in the chat. So Celine, Joe, and Vince are all there, and again, all will become clear in terms of their involvement and why they are in the chat this evening as we run through. So as always, trying to bring as much as we can to the table to help and make this a very interactive evening. And as I say, please use the chat, say hello, and let us know who you are. So the intent of today's session. We're going to be launching 2 massive new partnerships for Rugby Grounds Connected. I'm really excited to be able to share that with you. It'll be the first time you'll be hearing about that tonight. And again, as I say, very, very exciting time and moment for us to be able to launch those this evening. We're going to talk through our plans for 2022 and beyond, but crucially, also explain how you guys can get involved. And that's both get involved with some of the opportunities that we're going to talk through and share with you, but also just as importantly is for you to get involved and help us shape the future. Okay, so there'll be a number of questions that we'll ask, a number of polls we'll run to get your thoughts on how Rugby Grounds Connected looks into 2022 and beyond. And of course, the main hub of the evening is going to be sharing some of Mr. Buttar's wisdom with some questions that you guys have asked us and will hopefully continue to ask in the chat tonight. So that's the intent of the session. So we'll get stuck into it. First and foremost, as we always do, we just want to start. Let us know a little bit about who the audience is tonight. So please use the multiple choice questions, and Alex Thompson is just going to talk through how to do that.
Yeah, so that's jumped up with you now. I can see lots of people have jumped already in, but let us know your role. Let's see who we've got joining us this evening. You can, if you've got more than one role, you can actually do multiple choice on this one. If for any reason you don't see any of the polls, you can use that chat function and let us know in that one. So if it's not worked for you this evening, then please do use the chat function. But you know, it's interesting what's coming through so far. We've got quite a lot of grounds volunteers, as we expect, and some club committee members. So I'm just going to give that a last few seconds. So get your it's in there now. But we've got a good mixture that have come to join us. And as I say, if it's not on there or doesn't quite fit with you, please let us know in the chat function. I'm going to end that poll now and share the results with you. So there's a good mix, Ted, Kieran and Jim, really, in regard to club grounds volunteers being the highest, but it's quite closely followed by club committee members. And that might be because they're on both, because they might have put both there. But so that's the key ones that hopefully that they're really interested, the committee members, on about grounds there, and a mixture there. So I'm heading back to you, Ted.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. And it's fascinating to us to see that and understand the audience, and brilliant to see committee members here. So that wider recognition of the importance of pitches and grounds maintenance. So thank you for taking the time to complete the poll. Okay, so we're going to get stuck in. The first part of the evening, really exciting news. Honda Rugby Grounds Connected. Our first ever principal partner. Honda Rugby Grounds Connected. Honda have come on board as our principal partner, and we are incredibly excited about the new partnership that we are starting to build around, you know, our program and everything that we offer in there. Honda are our RFU performance partner. And what's really interesting is they'll obviously be doing lots of work with the elite side of the game and the England team, but they're also extremely passionate about the performance of our pitches, and hence that association with Rugby Grounds Connected that they were so keen to be a part of. And really the partnership has been able already to be the catalyst for us to do a number of things. You'll see the rebrand. Honda Rugby Grounds Connected, a much more inclusive brand and name that we're really proud to move forward with. We have already started work on remodeling some of the offer that we have for the game, and that's very much in its infancy and will continue to build. But Kieran will touch on, for example, our remodeled web page, which will be much cleaner, much more intuitive. Again, Honda have really been the catalyst to enable us to do that. And the final part that again, Honda have really been creating some energy around is the reboot of the program. We're conscious been a little bit quiet for the last 6 months or so. And again, all the work we've done, Honda coming on board, have really not only enabled us to remodel, but reboot and bring some new energy back into this. And tonight, the webinar program is all courtesy of Honda, and is the start of many new things we'll be looking to do with the partnership. More events, more webinars, hopefully in the spring, face-to-face events, more opportunities for everyone out there, for grounds volunteers, more reward, more recognition, fundamentally more support for you guys to enable you to make life easier, to create better pitches with us. And we're really, really excited to be able to kind of launch this partnership this evening. As I said, we are extremely keen to get your views on this reboot and on this remodel. So something straight into the chat we'd like to start to tell us about is what you'd like to see more of through this new partnership that we're launching tonight with Honda. You know, do you want more events, more webinars? Would you like more face-to-face contact? Would you like new resources? Would you like training? We really want to hear your thoughts. They can be as left field as you like, as specific as you like, as broad as you like. Please share all that information and ideas in the chat, and we'll be picking that up. We'll collate it all at the end, and we will listen, as it says there, so that everyone attending tonight, everyone that picks this up, can start to help us shape our work with Honda so that we deliver exactly what's needed for our little Rugby Grounds Connected family. So we'll leave that in the chat, and we'll continue to move on. But just to stress, really exciting times, and you know, the evening today it's kind of been brought to us by Honda, which is great. The next incredibly exciting thing, completely separate to our new partnership with Honda, is another really exciting partnership that we're launching tonight under the auspices of the Pitch Advisory Service. And this really has been an incredible opportunity for us to work with the Grounds Management Association and the other national governing bodies of sport to create a program that we think is going to make a step change in what we can offer and the support we can offer to clubs and to grounds volunteers across the country. Fundamentally, this partnership, the Pitch Advisory Service, what it's enabled to happen is the employment of 4 full-time regional rugby union pitch advisors, which is just such a step forward, and we're so excited about. This has been made possible by significant investment from the Football Foundation through their government multi-sport agenda, through our friends at Sport England, and I'm really proud to say significant investment from the RFU as well, really showing our commitment to helping grounds volunteers, helping clubs to improve their pitches. Bit more information about the Pitch Advisory Service. So the group of advisors are employed by the Grounds Management Association, and the rugby union advisors are employed alongside 13 other sport-specific advisors across football, across cricket, and across rugby league. We're really proud of the team recruited and in place, ready to come out and help clubs. Those names probably won't mean anything to you right now, but I hope in 6 months, 12 months time, there'll be people that you're on first name terms with and are engaging with them to help support you and improve your pitch management and maintenance programs. In the Southwest, Simon Johnson, an experienced, respected pitch advisor, has worked in a number of sports, but a real rugby union man, going to be a massive asset. So if you're a club engaged tonight from the Southwest, we're going to tell you how to get involved, and Simon will no doubt be someone you become very close to very quickly. In the Southeast, we've got Darren Simmons, who's also the key account manager for the program. And Darren, again, is an experienced, respected pitch advisor that's been involved in supporting grassroots clubs for a number of years. I feel like I speak to Darren more than I speak to my wife at the minute, but that's just because he's passionate, so passionate about getting this program off the ground and making it a success. In the Midlands, really pleased to have Todd on board, and Todd is from a different background. Todd, for a number of years, was head groundsman at Walsall Football Club, so really bringing a different dynamic to the team. And then last and certainly not least is Ian up in the north. And Ian has a rich background, most recently in education, but has worked practically on sports pitch advice and agronomy with golf and obviously winter sports as well. So brief introduction to those guys. They're in the chat function tonight, so say hello and make contact. And they'll be on hand to answer any technical questions. But what a great team, and an absolutely massive benefit now, and part of what we can do, and a key part of Rugby Grounds Connected. Very simply, these guys are employed to visit rugby clubs, to inspire you, to guide you, and advise you on pitch maintenance, which is exactly what it is that we're all about at Rugby Grounds Connected. To be really clear, this is a free service to clubs. It's funded through, as I say, the RFU and other governing bodies of sport. There is no catch. This is just an additional way we can help support you and support you develop your pitches. It's a 3-year program ending in summer 2024, but we obviously hope that it's going to be a great success and it's going to continue beyond that point. And again, just to put any minds at rest, the new regional pitch advisors will work with our existing volunteer pitch advisors, Andy, Colin, Martin, Lawrence, and of course, Keith Kemp. So what this is going to enable us to do is increase capacity and enhance what we do. And all those networks are already starting to take shape in terms of the combination of volunteer pitch advisors, Keith, Jim, the facility development team, and the new RPAs. Get involved now. This is live, it's ready to go. This isn't something we're telling you about that you can wait and get involved with next week or next month. We can get involved now. And this is a point I'm going to hand over to Kieran, who is just going to tell you and explain to you a little bit more about our remodel, but particularly how you can get straight involved with our new pitch advisory service. Kieran.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ted. If you move me on. So evidently from the last 18 months, it's evident that online platform is really, really important. Having a really good landing page and good web page is key to the program, and having information or information where you can access very, very simply and very, very quickly. So we've remodeled the web page. So if you looked at the natural turf pitch guidance yesterday on englandrugby.com, it'll be very different to what you see today. So I learned a new term for this process. The vanity link for the web page is up there. So englandrugby.com/RFU Rugby Grounds should take you to our new remodeled landing page for all of the pitch guidance. In terms of the GMA offer and getting yourself registering an interest for the pitch advisor visit, there's a very simple expression of interest form. So if you go to the landing page on the website, there'll be a very obvious tile that you can click on. It'll take you through to the expression of interest. Very, very simple, very, very clean. Few details. It should take you no longer than 5 minutes to upload that information, which will come through to us at the back end in the facilities team. We'll be able to process that then, and we'll be in touch directly to set up that visit. So that's very, very simple. In terms of the information or in terms of the issues that you might be having, could be just general advice, could be a very specific problem that you might be having, or it might be just that actually you just want to know that what you're doing is good. Like it might be the fact that actually we've been doing the same thing for a while. Is it the right thing that we're doing? So that's very, very, very simple. This is a bit of a kind of a first look at the website. So some of you may have already gone through to that to the new website and had a look. So this is what the new page will look like in terms of the 4 tiles on there. There will be a click through straight through to the on-demand webinars. So there are a number of these webinars that we've already run that are available via YouTube, and this one obviously will be uploaded at the back end of the week. There is a click through on one of those tiles straight to the GMA toolkit in terms of pitch guidance for rugby union. There's a 4th tile on there that talks about flooding guidance. So again, that'll be a seasonal tile, and obviously the animation that's just showed you there in terms of that top left tile will take you straight through to that pitch advisor expression of interest. So it'll take you through to that form. Very, very simple instructions, very, very simple form to fill in, and I say should take you no more than 5 minutes to complete the information we require up front, and we'll be in touch off the back of that. So that system is live. So we're launching it here tonight. A number of clubs already have had those visits just in terms of testing the processes, but it's now open to all. So if you are interested in a visit off the back of this webinar, off the back of hearing that is available, please do get onto the website, get onto the landing page, fill in your expression of interest, and we'll start to allocate those visits moving into the new year. So just in terms of an additional question, we're just interested again. We've launched it tonight. For some of you, this will be the first time you're hearing about it. So is there any questions about that pitch advisory service? Anything you want to ask of the GMA pitch advisors or the volunteer pitch advisors that are in the chat tonight? Anything that you want to land? So those guys are in that chat ready to respond. Obviously, we'll have those questions. I'm just going to hand back over to Alex for our second poll of the evening.
Kieran, and we're on to this poll, and that should be with you now. If it hasn't, then you can see what it says on the slide and put your answers into the chat function. But what is your biggest concern as a grounds volunteer for the next few years? What is it? Is it a lack of club funding to invest in the pitch? Is it getting more volunteers to help you? Is it that aging machinery stock that we've had, that's done us great work over the years, but is actually aging there? Is it sort of this impact of the environmental changes that we're seeing? Or is it no legacy plan for when you step down? What's going to happen post you? And if those aren't your biggest concerns, add your concern to the chat function. So that's the backup to go in there. But I can see most people are busy in a way. So this one is just you pick your biggest one. So let's give it a last few 10 seconds or so just to get those in. The last few. So say if we can't see it, add it to the chat function. But yes, I am going to close that poll there. And I'll share those results with you. And I don't think it comes as a big surprise to us that lack of club funding to invest in the pitch has come out the highest there at 47%. But volunteers are following there, How do we get more volunteers to help as well? So I'm going to hand back to Ted to move us on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. And it's fascinating seeing that intel from those polls. And we take that away and we listen. And when we're preparing this, we have a bit of a hunch where the polls might land. And I think it's fair to say, as Alex just suggested, we probably had a feeling that might land where it did. But it's still great to have that evidence base, and we can take that back in and use it to try and find solutions to the issues that you're facing. Okay, so we reached the point in the evening where Mr. Buttar is going to join us for our Honda Rugby Grounds Connected Q&A. Just before I talk to Jim, just to remind everyone, use the chat function, say hello, don't wait for us to be prompted. Feel free to ask a question at any point. And crucially, make sure that it's set to everyone, make sure it's set to panelists and attendees so that everyone's seeing your questions and you're seeing the information from everyone else so that you're, as I say, getting the full experience of the evening. So, two really exciting things we've talked through: the new partnership with Honda, the new pitch advisors, and now we move into the next part of the webinar, where we're going to be asking Jim some questions and getting into his grey cells. But before we do that, Jim, just be great to take an opportunity to have a quick chat, kind of fresh from the autumn series, the fixtures at Twickenham. How did they pan out from your perspective?
Good evening, everyone. Ted. As well as it could be hoped. So yeah, we were expecting the pitch to deteriorate over the period. So yeah, by the time I got around to the Barbarians, and unfortunately we ended up with 1,000 kids for 4.5 hours for a minis tournament just before the women kicked off. So that kind of really put us back a little bit. So we've done all the remedial works, but we're desperately trying to grow back about 35% of the pitch ready for a big game at the end of December. So yeah, typically as you'd expect. I mean, we were averaging around 15 hours a week of rugby, so including the captain's runs and all the activations and everything. So,
which is a lot more than people sometimes suspect in terms of the amount of rugby that's on the.
Yeah, unfortunately, a bit more happens before the cameras go live.
And just a bit of insight. So just to let everyone listening know. So in terms of your full-time team, how many people have you got full-time working with you now at Twickenham, and how many then join you on a match day to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as it can for the big events?
Right, so including myself, there's 4 of us. So there's obviously Ian Ayling, which I'm sure a lot of the guys on here will know. He's been a bit of a stalwart at Twickenham for a long time now, so really solid guy. So he's my deputy, and then I've got Andy Muir. He's one of my assistants. Again, been there. He's a 20-year plus veteran at HQ. And then recently we've had Phil McLean join us as the 4th member. So we've got 4 of us now working full time. Obviously, predominantly our priority is the pitch at Twickenham, but obviously we've got the rest of the grounds and surrounds that we need to look after as well. And then on match days, we've been struggling obviously a little bit due to COVID and things. We've tried to keep those numbers down. So Martin, who hopefully is in the chat, he's been coming to every game, absolutely rugby mad. So he's been coming in to help us. And we've actually had Dan, who I think is also on tonight, who's groundsman over at Harlequins. So he's been coming over to help us out for these matches as well for the best part of 2021. So just 6 of us at the moment, but ideally we'd probably inflate those match day numbers, maybe a couple more, just when we've got really busy periods.
Great. And last question for me, and I know absolutely no one is going to feel sorry for you at all, but just give us a flavour on a match day. What time are you arriving at Twickenham? What time are you leaving?
So we normally get in around sort of like 6:30, 6:45, and then generally we're normally leaving because it depends what time that kickoff is, but generally whenever the kickoff finishes, you can normally add about another 4 hours on before we've wrapped up and finished. So right. They are long days.
Interesting. Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so we'll pick up some of the questions now, but just to stress, we're really keen to continue for people to chuck questions into the chat. And I guess one of three things will happen. Either the volunteer pitch advisors, the RPAs, the facility development team, or our friends from Honda will pick up and answer the question in the chat. If we get an opportunity, we may feed some of them questions live into Jim if there's an opportunity to do that. But if you ask a question that we're not able to answer in that way, as we always say, we'll take that question away and we will get back to you away from the webinar this evening. Okay, so hopefully sit back and listen to some of the questions that we've already received, but also feel free to fire questions into the chat and we will, between us, between the army of people we have involved, respond to them. Okay, so first question. It's a really good question from Martin down at Avonmouth, down in the southwest. And Jim, what Martin's asking is saying that in the last few years, the club's put fertilizer down in the summer. But this year they've had some advice that it might be best to do it later in the year to help leaf growth. What would you recommend?
As with all these questions, obviously there's a degree of context missing. So obviously it's only a certain amount of information I'm getting here, but based on just this question as it is now, a lot of it's going to be dependent on getting that balance right with the ground temperature and the soil moisture. It's that both of those combined need to be at a certain level for that fertilizer to be as efficient as possible. So sometimes putting it down in the summer, that fertilizer actually won't do anything if it's dry. So if there's no moisture or anything like that, that fertilizer will literally do nothing. It will sit there until there's moisture available, and then obviously there'll be that chemical breakdown reaction, and then it will release its nutrients. So yeah, with respect to that, the idea is that you would do it when you know there's going to be some moisture. Obviously, in our fine country, that's very difficult to predict sometimes. But generally, if you refer back to a webinar that we did about feeding the turf, there's a whole piece in there with regards to what would be your best way to approach the nutrition certainly for almost a whole year. It's obviously purely just down to budget, but yes, it is more down to thinking about that ground temperature and the moisture in the ground to get the most out of that fertilizer, maximizing the value.
Great. So it's a bit of touch and feel rather than a definitive answer. Yes, no. Touch and feel the conditions, the ground conditions, the weather, and almost play it by ear depending on your own circumstances.
Absolutely, and it's one a groundsman kind of picks up over time as well. There's no definitive guide. I mean, you could get told a thousand different ways to do it, but unless you're there regularly and you know where you are geographically, you know what the weather's like, it's a lot easier to work with it yourselves and just base on experience.
Great, thanks. So Martin, there's some thoughts from Jim, and obviously everything we've talked about earlier. I'm sure volunteer pitch advisors, RPAs, I'm sure Simon down the south would be dead keen to have a visit if he hasn't already and have a look and chat that through with you. But that's some interesting feedback of our first question of the evening. Okay, simple one. Martin Curran, one of our stalwart attendees. Great to have you on board, Martin, and thanks for the question. Clippings, let them fly or collect?
And again, this is ideally you'd want to try and have a balance of both. So there's going to be times where the conditions are absolutely fine just to let those clippings fly. Essentially, you're going to be feeding the pitch again. So obviously all that nutrition is going to be in the leaf. So when that breaks down and moves its way down into the bottom of the grass plant there, then that's just going to be released and go into the ground again. So in some respects, it's going to almost make your fertilizer actually run a little bit longer again. But then you're going to find actually there's a fine line because you get that thatch build up. So if you can do a bit of both, ideally. If not, your clippings are fly, then you're looking at more likely doing a bit more grooming, a bit more aeration, just to try and counteract that thatch effect that you're going to get over the course of the year of letting the clippings fly. And that thatch is just basically that build-up of organic matter that's not able to break down. Obviously, the more you let your clippings fly, or the more grass there is laying on the surface there, the longer, harder and deeper that thatch is going to be. So yeah, ideally, you probably want to do a bit of both. It's just, again, based on conditions.
Great. Okay, thanks, and good to see some questions starting to drop into the chat. So no doubt that will get active, and if we have chance, we'll perhaps pick some of those up with Jim. Our next question on screen is from Robbie Eason, and it's, again, simple question: chain, harrow, or brush? Thoughts?
My personal opinion is if you can find a happy medium of using both of these are absolutely fine. Again, this is always going to be condition related again. So chain harrow probably during the summer when the growth is a bit more aggressive and active, it's going to be able to recover quicker. I think you tend to find with the chain harrow, if it's your only option, it's your only option. But if you've got a brush there and that you're able to groom a bit more regularly to stand the grass up, then that'll probably be the preference. But yeah, the chain harrow is going to have a point where you're going to have to stop using it purely because the conditions or of either the weather or the pitch, you're actually going to do more damage than good by using it. So yeah, there's a sweet spot when you use certain bits of kit, unless you're fortunate enough to have maybe potentially a multi-tool that goes on the back of a tractor where you can actually adapt and change and take certain elements out and put them back in again, i.e. being able to do a star slitting or a rake or a brush or a roll, and mediate between the lot of them. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot there that you can kind of take. I think a chain harrow has a place, whether I think it should be as actively used now as what it probably should be. I should imagine it's probably a bit too much for what we're looking for if you're looking for pitch quality now.
And Jim, we're talking a chain harrow, we're talking about kind of spikes up, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, basically. I mean, essentially, it becomes a drag mat, which is what you're doing. Is where you're pulling debris around and being able to knock any divots back from play and things like that. But realistically, you only need to go over that to a point where you can't manage it yourself manually, i.e., go out and repair your damaged areas with a fork. Essentially, there's always going to be that point where it's gone too far, i.e. you're never going to have the time to be able to do that manual intervention and repair, in which case then you are starting to rely on things like that. But again, and Keith will back me up with that one, and I'm sure a lot of guys in the chat will. It's all down to the conditions. If the conditions are right, then yes, absolutely fine. Obviously, if the conditions are starting to deteriorate, then you've got to seriously consider what you do use, if you use anything at all.
Great. And both those things would help with pattern on the pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they'll both be able to present the pitch in a way that you'll be able to get a nice clean pattern in. So yeah, both will work absolutely fine.
Excellent. Okay, Robbie, hope that was useful. And then final question on this slide is from Andrew Freeze, a president, St Ives in the Midlands, not down in the southwest. So interesting question. It'd be interesting again if our colleagues can elaborate on this in the chat as well. But Jim, how do you find old blocked drains which could be leaking from below and creating local water logging? Any thoughts?
So this is probably one of the most interesting questions, to be fair, because again, this needs such a massive detail of information just to bring some context to it. Obviously, if it's a serious problem, i.e. if this is potentially getting games called off and it's large areas, then the best way to do is just invest and have a drainage consultant come in there and actually try and help you find that pipe that's failed. If it's a failed pipe, it potentially could be something else, but you'll need to get a good idea from what that could be. If you're doing everything right on the surface, i.e. if you're carrying out your aeration regularly, if your surface is clean, if it's not obviously in a dip or a hollow or anything like that, then obviously that's your next step, is to check the drainage. Realistically, the likelihood of a failed drain where it's cracked, again, that will completely depend on what it's been used for previously, how long it's been in there for, the age, etc. But yeah, drainage consultant would be your best port of call, and there are lots out there that'll be quite happy to come out there that have got that expertise with being able to kind of do that full assessment. And then once you've got it and you've paid for it, you've got it, then you know exactly what you've got, you know where all your drains lie, you know if they all work, and then at least then you know where you're investing your money, when you've got those funds available.
Okay, good. Yeah, and it's an interesting one. And I got not suggesting this is the case here, but when clubs first see kind of waterlogging and issues like that, pitches holding water, the immediate default sometimes is around drainage, and the drainage is a problem. But actually, a lot of the time, we seem to see pitches where the drainage is fine, but the water's not getting to the drainage because that effectively the maintenance isn't quite as strong. And again, not suggesting for a second that's the case there,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly something that needs to be kept in the mind with regards to anything with drainage. If your maintenance is absolutely spot on and you're doing everything what you should be doing, then yes, your next step is to check that drainage. But like I say, you can get cameras in there and send up there, and I don't think they're particularly expensive. You're looking at a bit of time there where you're going to have somebody who's just going to be able to find out if that has failed or not.
Right.
But yeah, definitely that's the way to go.
Great. Okay, we're going to take our first live question from the chat. Really good question from Malcolm Thompson, and a classic question: Slitter or spiking, which is more effective?
So they both do similar jobs. So the best way to see it is that a slitter is going to have probably less impact on the surface. So you can probably get away with maybe doing that a bit closer to fixtures. So if, for instance, you've got games coming up and you know it's going to be wet, you might not have a verti-drain on site, but you do have a slitter, then obviously that's your option, is to just get some holes moved in there. Also, it will help prune roots and kind of redirect roots a little bit as well. Again, with a slitter and any aeration, I think it's going to be a strong suit. Again, it's that the conditions have got to be right for that. But for me, both are as important as the other. So it's a case of just varying that and how you use them, and make sure they're in good working order. You can get different depths, different tines, and plates to go on the slitter as well. So that it's best to have that variation there when you're doing your aeration.
Great. Okay, I'll give you an opportunity to grab a drink of water, because I think these questions are coming more in my direction.
Good.
And really good questions. So John, great friend of ours, appeared on our webinars in the past, from the legendary Rose Friday Club. John's question is that they're currently using RFU suppliers to buy seed, fertilizer, and to organise annual renovations. Will this continue? John, absolutely. It will continue, and we're delighted to see that you're, as a club, taking advantage of some of these things that we've been able to facilitate. The new partnership with Honda, the new work we're doing with the regional pitch advisors will enhance what we're already doing. And we're not looking to remove any of the positive things we're doing. We're just looking to build on them. So any concerns there, there doesn't need to be any concerns there. Those relationships will continue, which is great. And then again, Paul, someone I know from a number of years back up in Sunderland, has asked a question about purchasing power and what discount clubs receive. So I'll answer that generally, really, which is our whole approach to this concept of what value can the RFU bring. And we have, as John Sayer touches on in his question, ways in which clubs can access machinery through what was the Key Kent package, now the RFU package, can access sand, can access seed, fertilizer, a whole range of products, fencing, goalposts. And a couple of things to say on this, really, which I think, these are things I'm really proud of, very practical and pragmatic ways we can help clubs. First thing is, when we create anything like this for a club, we take nothing from it. Okay, so any saving that can be made is passed directly to the club. There's no kickback or anything like that for the RFU. What we want to be able to do is to get the best possible service to clubs, best possible products at the most competitive price achievable, and we don't want to take anything from that. So that's the first thing I wanted to say on that. The second thing is, when we go into anything like this, we know, and I know, that rugby clubs are pretty savvy, and if there's a good deal to be had, a rugby club will get a really good deal. And that's the starting point, really. If we're going to work with anyone, if we're going to signpost any rugby clubs to any kind of supplier, we need to know absolutely that the deal that's put on the table is the best possible deal, that any rugby club is not going to be able to go elsewhere and get a better deal. And what I'm really proud to say is that 5-6 years since we've started to create these types of partnerships, I don't have a single occasion where a rugby club has come back to me and said, Ted, I can get that cheaper from the supplier down the road or online or from everywhere else. And we got 100% record on that. So what the actual discount is, to answer the question, there's a range of things. Certainly, we're not talking about a few quid or a few percent. We're in the realms of 15, 20, 25%, really making a difference to clubs. So, Paul, I hope that answers your question. Again, hopefully clarifies why we do it. And I just see that whole area as something that the RFU's reputation is at stake. My reputation, my team's reputation is at stake if we're standing up and saying this is a really good deal. We need it to be absolutely brilliant. So 2 questions there about suppliers and work we've done that we're looking to build on with the partnership with Honda and obviously through DRPA as well. So hopefully Jim has had a quick swig of water and we'll move on. And we have another question from Jonathan down at Finsbury Park. And it's a really good question. The pitch is not sloped, but it could at times be described as a little lumpy in places. Jim, do you have any suggestions about what options the club have to improve this over the course of the calendar year? So not a quick fix, they're committed to over a period of time. And if you can give them any help, they'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think the best way to approach this is, I think, again, being very pragmatic. I'd probably actually extend it out beyond a calendar year. It depends, obviously, how lumpy in places would be regarded as good or bad. The easiest thing to do is essentially working a way through these, if you can kind of do it in sense where you've isolate your areas where you know there's a good chance that there's going to be injuries. You would regard it as not safe for when they're playing. Those are the areas that you target first. And I think the way to do it is that if you've got those troughs, is to start lifting those up, especially if it's only remedial. If we're only looking at less than sort of like 50 mil and shallower, you can normally just leave those. If you've got a verti-drain, or you can even do it by hand with a fork, and literally just heave those and actually just get some sand down those holes and just compact it back down again. Once you start going beyond that, you actually start getting to the levels of, if we're talking large areas that say are proud, you might actually find you'll end up having to cut that area out of turf. If you can keep it nice and thick, and you can actually take them off in sections, and actually just put it to one side and actually just start to level off and take out the subsoil out of there if it's available, and you've got the right depth to it. And then essentially you can just put that turf straight back on top and let it bed in. Again, you've got to try and work this in with your fixtures. Ultimately, you're looking to probably try and start doing some of this in your renovations, where you know you're going to have a period of rest and you can actually do some time for it to establish again. So yeah, over the course of that year, it's just to try and work out that elements. If there's things that you think are unsafe, yes, look to start doing stuff during the calendar year and beyond. If not, then you're looking to try and do it in your renovations, in which case you've just got to have a very good solid plan in place, identify those areas that you know are bad, and again, you target those first, and even if that means you've just got somebody coming in there to take care of 500 square meters to start with, you identify that bad area. And I've mentioned it before in one of our webinars, it's the same principle with badly areas that don't drain particularly well. Same principle, just target those areas. At the end of the day, any improvement, however small, is an improvement. So it's better to view it like that rather than trying to treat the pitch as a whole. Sometimes it's very difficult to try and do that if you've got really big concerns with the levels, and unless you've got that funding there to do a full renovation and actually start getting those levels sorted out at that time.
Great, yeah, really insightful response and a really good question. Jonathan, I hope you are teeing up an expression of interest form, and hopefully Darren can get down to see you to pick up on Jim's advice there, and we can really help you over that period of time to resolve those challenges that you've got down at the club. And I think there was another similar question in the chat as well that hopefully Jim's response there has been helpful with. Tony Wood down in Bideford, down in the southwest, head groundsperson. So this one again is a very current issue. If your club is a CASC, a community amateur sports club, which is a status of governance for sports clubs and rugby clubs can register, can you still use red diesel after April the 1st? Okay, so for those who don't know, there is some regulatory change coming into being around the use of red diesel. So Tony, unfortunately, I can't give you a clean yes/no answer, but what I can say is this is something that ourselves, the other governing bodies, the GMA, are aware of, have picked up on, and are looking to deal direct with government, or are already dealing direct with government to try and get a very clear steer on. It's obviously a concern for us, and it may be something where community sports clubs, especially as registered through the CAS scheme, are potentially falling victims to a regulation that really is not designed to hit them at all. So thanks for flagging. It's a great question, opportunity for us to make the wider audience aware. And although we can't answer it, we will be seeking that answer. We will be looking to lobby if it's not the answer that we would like. And as soon as we have something definitive on that, we will be communicating it to 100 Rugby Grounds Connected members, and you will be the first to hear. So thanks for flagging it. Okay, back to you, Jim. Martin Curry. Again, Martin, someone who we engage with on a regular basis, quite a specific question. Feel free in the chat if anyone wants to get stuck into this, but we'll fire it into Jim. Does anyone have any experience of using Barrenbrook SOS to repair pitches over the winter, or any other solutions that you'd like to recommend? Jim, over to you.
Yeah, so actually way back when they were doing their first initial trials with Barrenbrook SOS, in a previous life when I was a groundsman at a football club, we actually did the trials for these. So essentially the SOS, it's a tetraploid variety which has the ability to germinate in cooler temperatures. So if it's around 4 or plus 4 degrees for 30 days, essentially that will germinate still. Normal grass seed diploids, they're less so likely to do that unless the ground temperatures are stable for a long period of time. So yeah, you can use that, and it should certainly be looked at. I think the key here is that it's expensive, so it should be seen as not potentially a last resort. I should think it should be something that could probably be put into a program, but it should be sparingly used. I think the bottom line is, I think if you've got your maintenance program and it's good and your pitch quality is starting to improve, you probably should get to a point where you shouldn't need to use the Barrenbrook SOS or another that has that type of varieties in it. But certainly for your hardware areas, there's nothing wrong with lightly overseeding your scrum areas. You're better to be active rather than reactive. So to try and put something in there. I think the issue you've got as well that you've got to take into consideration is you don't want to just be solely reliant on that tetraploid. It's a slightly different color. The leaf is a little bit different as well. So you definitely know that you would have put that down somewhere. So you're best to try and mix it with something else if you can. So generally the diploids and the tetraploids, they tend to mix them rather than straight mixes now. But I could honestly go on the pros and cons for being able to do this. I could go on forever. I think ultimately it'd be worth probably trialing an area and see if it actually works for you. That's generally what I tend to do with pretty much everything. I always, if I feel like it's worth investigating further, the only way you're going to know if it works or not is by giving it a go.
Yeah, good, great. Okay, Martin, we hope that was useful. And anyone in attendance, whether volunteer, pitch advisor, RPA, anyone else, just an attendee, if you've got any thoughts, if you've tried it, please put it in the chat. That's what this is all about, connecting us together. Okay, a bit of a detailed question here from Rams over in Reading, and Rod, their grounds manager. Can we get some advice on the best watering strategy before and after overseeding in dry conditions? Excellent grass growth after overseeding at the beginning of June, thanks to copious watering with our irrigation system. Brilliant that you've got one. We now fear that the watering strategy of regular dousing made the roots lazy during establishment and are struggling with roots pulling out of the turf. Really interesting question, Rod, and thanks for flagging it. Jim, it'd be really interesting to see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so like Ted just mentioned there, absolutely brilliant that you've got an irrigation system, so be able to put any water down during the summer. I think there's going to be a lot of people on this chat and on the on this webinar tonight that are going to be very jealous. I think the key to remember here is that essentially when you're growing anything in from seed is to be light and regular until it starts to germinate, and as that germination process goes through and it starts to actually split and you get the second and third leaf, the root is starting to work its way down. The best thing to do then is actually start carrying out some heavier watering and actually try and leave it for 2 or 3 days and allow that water to move through the profile. So therefore, you're trying to trigger that root growth to start moving down and searching for the water rather than just sitting there. If you're regularly watering all the time and that water just it's essentially got wet feet, it doesn't need to go looking for it, therefore the roots won't move down. But if you're able to aerate regularly, if you're able to water deeply and then leave it for as long as you can, essentially, and as it starts to establish, you'll tend to find that it's actually quite capable of lasting a few days, even in really hot temperatures. You might get a few hot spots which might need some additional water, but you should be able to start seeing that extension go out there, even as the temperatures are still staying quite warm. And the other thing to do is to use germination sheets, Hessian sacking earlier on, so you can water less and it stays damper for longer just while you get that initial germination. But essentially, once that starts to germinate and it starts to send a root down, you should then start to be able to manage that watering, and try and get that heavy dousing water in there and just allow that to move through the profile and get the roots moving down there. And once the roots have got down there and they're anchored in, you have to imagine as well that's created little porous pockets, so it's going to help with actually moving water down through the profile during the winter time when it is the wetter months. And also, if it's got a huge root system on it, it's going to be able to take up nutrition really easily as well. So all those sort of things you can kind of start adding in there, that the root establishment part of it. But the water inside of it, for definite, I think it's very easy to fall into the, oh, we keep watering it because it's hot today. But until you start seeing signs that it actually needs that water, see if you can just eke it out another day. That day in 24 hours is a big difference for root establishment.
Okay, great, fascinating. And one thing, again, time is catching up with us, but we're going to stick with as planned. We don't want to compromise too much. We're going to drift over 8, but not too significantly. Okay, so just to flag that now, and hopefully you can hang around just so we don't cut short. And we do everything we can to cover everything off. So, question here that's coming in my direction. Definitely, I'm going to kind of give two answers to this from Rob down in St Austell. It's about saying, we've not had the funding for 3 years to seed the pitch, and are there any grants available for pitch maintenance? So 2 things really. One is just to give an insight into some of the challenges we have around this. So pitch maintenance and managing your pitches on an ongoing basis is kind of considered to be an operating cost of a club. So it's very difficult in that instance then to provide grant funding, which fundamentally grant funding is just a one-off intervention. So really, it's a short-term measure for a grant to be given in a particular year when the same problem around funding is just going to present itself in every year beyond that. It's kind of similar in some ways, I suppose, to the RFU giving a grant to a club to kind of pay their Sky bill, which they'll get Sky for a year, but then the next year they've got to find the funding again. So that's one of the challenges we face around trying to create funding programs for maintenance, which is considered to be an ongoing cost. But there are ways we try and work through that around funding for pitch renovations, which is different in a summer to really set the tone. Obviously, we've invested historically in larger pitch drainage schemes, but one of the ways we're really interested in looking at is around machinery. So enabling clubs to, rather than rely on ongoing expenditure with a contractor, actually to invest in their own machinery, upskill, gain advice through our programs, and actually take on more of the pitch maintenance themselves to reduce the costs. So wanted to share that because it's hopefully quite an interesting thought and view about the funding of maintenance and some of the challenges that presents. To actually answer the question, where are we in terms of funding? The funding really coming from the RFU, coming from our different partners, at the minute has been very focused around COVID, and it's been focused around clubs surviving through COVID, recovering from COVID, and building back from COVID. But there are a number of things in the offing as we come into 2022 that are looking quite positive for grant funding for clubs. So can't say any more than that now, but sit tight and keep your eyes out for that as we move through into the spring and summer. Okay, so Jim, we've flown through loads of questions there. I think we've done it justice, though, and we are very grateful, as always, for your input. If you've asked a question, hopefully we've covered that off. If we've not picked it up with Jim, it's been covered in the chat. But we will, as I say, take every single question that's been flagged, particularly those ones we haven't got around to answering live on the webinar, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can with some thoughts on it. So, Jim, thank you very much. What's your next fixture?
Big game. So Harlequins, Northampton Saints, 27th of December.
Well, I'm sure everyone will join me in wishing you all the best for that. And thank you for your input for the evening.
Yeah,
so,
no problems at all.
Moving towards a conclusion, and I'm going to hand over to Alex Thompson, who's got a really interesting question for us about training. Tomo.
So that poll is with you now. Like you say, if you can't see it, put your answer into the chat function. But if formal GMA grounds maintenance training were available specific to rugby union grounds volunteers, do you think you would get involved? You know, should be up for this. Just to be clear, just when we're talking about training and things. So informal training is things like this, answering sort of questions and videos and things. Formal training will generally be a program that you go through, some sort of certification, or, you know, and potentially could have some assessment in it. So let us know what your thoughts are. Quite a lot of you have already answered. So we'll just wait for the last few to come in and just have a think about it. Yeah, whether it's no thanks, we'll consider it with a bit more details, or would certainly be up for it. So we'll just let those last few seconds come in. Okay, and I'm going to end the poll there. I'll share the results with you. So what it would seem to be, 62% would almost certainly be up for it. So quite a few. Some would like some further information, some more details, haven't made their mind up yet. And some, it's just not for them. But quite a lot are very much interested in it, Ted. So very interesting. Handing back to you.
Yeah, that is great. It's great insight. And again, I say you kind of have a hunch about the polls, and that was the one really didn't know which way it was going to go. And it's fascinating to see that feedback, and it's really positive. And it's just another way we want to get your feedback to shape as we move forward with Honda, as we move forward with the programs, to shape everything in a way that it meets the needs of you guys moving forward. So thank you again, taking the time. That insight is absolutely valuable to us. Okay, so we really are moving towards the conclusion of the evening. Don't forget our on-demand webinars, accessible via the webpage that Kieran shared with us. We've got our pitch maintenance overview webinar that we ran with Jim last year. We've got a great webinar featuring Keith Kent, among others, around wet weather. Again, good timing really to start to think about preparing your spring renovation. And again, one of our more technical scientific webinars we ran around fertilizer. Jim's referenced it today. They're all on demand, really easy to access now through the webpage. And the beauty of what we want to do now is not repeat sessions we've run before. Focus and promote and share our on-demand webinars for certain themes and build up the content with different topics and content for our live webinars. And there's a URL which should be in the chat now for you to pick up as well. So don't forget, take a look at them and at your convenience. And obviously tonight's session will be added imminently. So in summary, hope it's come across. We feel like it's a really exciting time for Rugby Grounds Connected. The Honda partnership is just something that shows how far we've come as a group, as a community, since we kind of first launched 4 or 5 years ago, to a company with that prestige and that credibility to select our program and to partner with us is pretty special. So that's going to create lots of new opportunities. And as we've already got feedback from you, if you reflect, have any different ideas, please get in touch with us. Again, very much remodeled on the webpage, access through social media, through Twitter, through our email. It's all on there, one click away. Let us know. We really want to hear your thoughts. The pitch advisors are ready to go. Okay, it's not next week, not next month, not next year, ready to go now. Please get involved. And Kieran's showing you how simple it is to express an interest in doing that. And I know the guys have been active in the chat tonight, so it's another brilliant string to our bow. And in summary, please help us to shape the future. Can't stress that enough. So I'll leave you with a question in the chat. What themes would you like us to cover in future webinars and live events? And that's something we really want to get back to in the spring, to be able to see people get out on the road and run some events. So please let us know anything at all. It can be really specific, really general, something left field that you'd like us to cover. Again, all part of this concept that we want you to tell us, really, and we will deliver against your needs. So let us know in the chat, and we'll leave that open as we kind of sign off for a little while. So just to wrap up, really, thank you to Jim for giving us his insight and his views on all those questions. Thank you to Honda for making the program possible and for getting involved and backing us, which is incredibly exciting. Thanks to the VPAs in the chat. Thanks to the RFU staff. Thanks to the new RPAs. But most of all, obviously, thank you for everyone who's taken the time to listen, to submit a question, to be active in the chat. We really, really hope you found it useful. So englandrugby.com/RFU Rugby Grounds, our new webpage. Please take a look at it, and we'll leave you to drop us some info into the chat about your thoughts on future webinars. Really grateful for you to take the time to connect, and hopefully we will speak to you all very soon.